Mindful Happy Kids, created and narrated by Dr. Elisabeth Paige, consists of interviews with children's authors and poets and illustrators, musicians of all types, and yoga and mindfulness practitioners. Dr. Paige also reads from her own children's books on compassion, gratitude, mindfulness, and yoga. Pippi the puppy and Dr. Paige practice meditations or pet-centered meditations, which are recorded as part of the videos. Hi, Kate McKinney. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. We're so excited to have you. I loved your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely loved your book and
Oh,
can't wait to talk to you more about it. But first, I'm going to have you introduce yourself.
great. Um, I'm Kate McKinney, and I'm an author, and this is my young adult novel, When to Hold On. It's my debut, and I live with my family in southwestern Wisconsin. It's in the Driftless area, so it's a very hilly countryside area. Um, I guess other things about myself is I like to just be outdoors and I like to plant native gardens. I also am studying Aikido. It's a martial arts, and there's a couple of things.
Great. So, can you explain more about the Driftless area since it's the setting of your book?
Sure. Yeah, it's a very hilly countryside in general. It's in the Midwest in the United States, and we're kind of known for small farms. And there are very steep slopes because of this land. This area was not glaciated, so all the different glaciated periods they never came around this kind of pocket of area between part of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. And there's deep valleys like river valleys, and the rock that is here is hundreds of years old or hundreds of millions of years ago. um, and the steep slopes made like some of the bigger farming harder to do. Like, so the Great Plains are known for the prairie, but when European settlers came, they kind of dug it up and suppressed fire, and the prairie is mostly gone. It's 0.01% of what used to be here. And so in our steep hills and stuff, they couldn't farm. And so there's little pockets of original prairie. And since the 1970s, people have tried to restore the prairies and the oak savannas that were here when the native people lived here for thousands of years and managed the land with fire. And so we're trying to, people are trying to reintroduce fire into this area and to just rekindle the prairie plants because there's a lot of diversity there.
How would that work?
How does the
Reintroducing fire?
So so a prairie burn will it's a very it's not, you never want to say like controlled exactly, but it's a very cautiously done. And you have to check wind speed and humidity, air temperature, all these things to see if it's a good day. It's done usually in the spring or the fall. And then I don't know how detailed do you want me to get? Because
so they do the fires in order to allow other plants to grow. Is that what it's all about?
So the roots of the prairie plants go really deep, and once the seeds get established, they, are very sturdy, and they hold the soil, and they're there. And the burning takes out a lot of the other like invasive species and the newer plants that didn't really originate here. And so the prairie plants have a chance to come up and reestablish and have the elbow room kind of to grow.
Got it.
Does that
Oh,
make
okay.
sense? Or
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Thank you.
okay. Okay.
All right, now I'm going to switch totally to talking
Okay.
about the book because this book
Okay.
is so exciting.
Yeah.
I've started reading a little bit of stuff for kids in verse.
Great.
So I wanted you to talk about why you chose verse, what it means for you, and why this, I think the story is so beautifully written in verse. So if you could sort of talk all about that, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you. Um, so when I was in college, I took a young adult literature class that was aimed for educators, and I was a English major, and so I wasn't going to go into teaching, but I was really into writing, and I realized I wanted to write for either children or young adults, and so I got to read all these great books, all these young adult books, and one of the books was excuse me, was called Make Lemonade by Virginia Vera Woolf. And it was a verse novel. So it was the first verse novel that I read. And since I've read a lot more. But it was a newer format, genre kind of format. And I just was really taken with the whole idea that you could have a complete poem that would, have like a complete moment, but then have all these poems put together to create the story arc. And I equate it to like a pearl necklace, because like each poem is like a pearl where it's complete and beautiful, and it's whole, but strung together there's this whole necklace, and like the book has a whole story there. And it allows the reader to focus in, I think, even more so on certain moments, certain emotions, like metaphors can be used. And with Bryn's journey, the main character's journey is so connected to the land and the plants, and so using the metaphors of the plants and the land and life cycles and things really came to life with the poetry format. And also Bryn is a person of few words, and so having just a few words on the page kind of mirrors her way of being in life. And when I was also in college, I worked in a writing center, and I was a writing tutor, and we talked a lot about the idea of the balance between listening and talking, and how it was more about us listening to the writer to help them find their voice, and to put their words on the page, rather than us like correcting papers and fixing grammar or something. And so I kept thinking about this idea between listening and speaking and silence and sound. And I just love that combination, that they're two sides of a coin, or two parts that need to both be there. And this idea of like the silence around a music note, or the white space around the text of the poem. And so the page, you see the white space as well as the text, and that adds to the whole feeling. Also, that visual silence on the page, the white space, brings in that feeling, that silence in the novel, where there's the theme of talking and listening and not being able to talk, and not having anyone listening. And so there's this silence, these empty spaces between characters and between their words themselves, and all of that. So the poetry aspect just really lent to the themes that I wanted to explore in this book. And then
I think it
Bryn and
also makes
Zoe.
it more, I think it also makes it more accessible to kids who are reluctant readers. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel, for me, like looking at it, it doesn't feel as intimidating.
Yeah, that's one of the great things too. I love that you can like sip the poem, or you can race through it, and it's however the reader wants to take it in. You could just read one and then put it aside, or you could just read because it's a lot easier to move through it. It's, it flows, and it's small chunks, and it's easier to access.
Can you talk about the speaking in silence of Bryn?
Well, I was gonna say that I'm not sure. So Bryn is definitely not Bryn is quiet, and so she's not much of a talker. And then Zoe, her love interest, is very talkative. And so they're kind of two sides of that coin, but then they each have to wrestle with that question of how much to say, and when to listen and when to talk, when to speak up. And is that what you were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting juxtapose. I mean, I guess is the right word.
Yeah. Juxtaposition. Yeah. Yeah. That was, they have this connection, but then there's also a tension because they feel comfortable. Bryn feels comfortable in silence, and Zoe doesn't feel very comfortable. She feels comfortable filling it up with words, and so it's how do they come together and relate to each other.
And they change over the book.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Bryn gets more talkative.
Right.
And Zoe learns to listen a little better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's, it's finding that balance. Everyone has to find that balance of, when is the right time to speak up, and when is the right time to sit back and listen to someone else and let them have the words, So, yeah.
Can you tell me about your writing journey?
Sure. Yeah, so books were always just very treasured in my family, and so that was a really good start for me. And my dad also worked in technical theater, so I watched lots and lots of plays. And so I would go to work with him and sit in the wings or in the catwalks and watch, and the back in the house in the seats, and during rehearsals and everything. So I studied story by just watching again and again a story, on stage. And I loved thinking about how the characters were developed and how, what their pasts were. And so that was a really good foundation for me. And I was always a people watcher too. I mean, I still am. I love just, sitting back and watching people. And so that's part of it. And then when I was a kid, I would write in little journals. I had all the little notebooks, and I would write little poems or sayings or whatever things that, my thoughts. And then in middle school, there was my English class in 8th grade had a writer's workshop. And so we were able to do poetry and short stories. And I started the novel, but didn't finish it. And then in high school, I kind of drifted away from writing. I got into theater and music and visual art, so ceramics and painting and drawing, everything that I could do. But then it was in college that I took a creative writing class, and I circled back around to writing. And I realized that it kind of just combined all my interests. And I also liked working with kids and teenagers. And so writing for that age group just seemed like another, natural next step too. And, being a quiet person from, myself, it's a really great way to connect with people, both in my book, connecting with my characters, and then connecting with other writers, through, working on the craft of writing, and then now with readers, and kind of, talking about books and my book and whatever, it's just a great way to connect with the world for me. To write.
Why did you choose YA?
For this book, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I like to think that young adult books are for young adults and anyone who's been one, because we all are, just kind of making our way in life, and the teen years are like this very focused time of, figuring out self-identity and just how to kind of find and fight for hope. And I like a lot of those, the themes that come up in young adult books. And for me, one of the things was that I wanted to write a book that I needed at that age. When I was, I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and I was a teenager in the 90s. And, looking for books, there were like millions of books of boy meets girl stories, but I couldn't find any that were girl meets girl stories. And being someone who was attracted to both boys and girls, I was like, well, that's, part of my identity, but not my whole identity. And so what are these feelings that I'm feeling? What is the story? And like, where's the representation for what I'm feeling? And so I really wanted to show a story that was about two people, two girls that were falling in love, and that the relationship wasn't questioned. It wasn't like, oh, is it okay? But that it just was completely valid and within a larger, woven within a larger context. And, these two characters are finding their way in life and, dealing with different struggles at the same time. And so, and then coming together through that connection with each other. And then I also, young adult, again, just kind of exploring the themes that were important to me. Like holding space for quiet people is another part of it. And I wanted to have a story that would hold space for a quiet person and not try to make that character be a different person than they are, but actually, allow them to find a quiet way of living in life and an empowered way, like a quiet and empowered way. And Susan Cain is an author of a nonfiction book called Quiet. And I really recommend it. It's definitely about showing the world that we need quiet people. Like, it's important too. So that was an inspiration to find for me. And then also holding space for grief. Just we need places for, talking about our grief and death, because our culture tends to kind of repress feelings. And, I think it's important to talk about. And so for teenagers to have these conversations, I think is really important, to just have space to see that we can talk about all these things, grief, being a quiet person, girl meets girl stories, all of it, good things.
Yeah, you did a wonderful job putting it all together in one space. I liked it. I liked the way that you did that. Okay, so Bryn is more comfortable in nature than with people.
Yeah.
How did you depict this, and can you give me some examples?
Sure. So being in nature is where Bryn was most comfortable. And
let's just say that Bryn's mother was dying of cancer.
Right.
So she escaped to nature a lot.
Right. So she is naturally, she likes being in nature. She and her mom used to roam the backwoods of her grandparents' farm, and they connected over, like the mom taught her about prairie restoration, and that's actually how her and her stepdad, Bryn's mom and Bryn's stepdad met and fell in love, was through working on restorations together. And so there's that kind of back history of always enjoying being in nature and being a quiet person. She, finds great joy in, like the sounds of the silence of the water, the creek over the rocks, and the wind and the crickets, all that. And she's comfortable sitting with her thoughts. So what she doesn't find comfortable is the chit chat that people do, and the small talk, and that's noise to her. That's and like sharing herself too much or something with new people and stuff, that's hard. So I'm going to share a poem where it's in the beginning. She has met she crossed paths with Zoe, but she's gonna like meet her now, but she doesn't know what her name is, so she's just referred to as that girl. Zoe is just that girl. So in the far corner, she's at the library, and the library is where her mom was the director. At this point in the story, her mom is still sick. She hasn't died yet, but it's in the back of her mind. It's stressing her out, but she's trying not to focus on that. But anyways, this is when they meet. In the far corner, that girl with hair the color of burnt sienna cocks her head to the side and smiles. This seat taken? I lurch forward, gesture to the empty chair, want to say, all yours, but too tongue-tied. I duck my head, hold my breath tightly to my chest, glimpse her turquoise scarf, green paisley tights, black boots, the open page of my sketchbook. In this corner of Wisconsin, where glaciers never flattened our land, heavy rains in springtime combine with snowmelt, gush down steep slopes so hard they roar. A person can hardly think over the sound. But that massive amount of water pounding rock can't compare to the pounding within me. The vein in my thumb pulses as I grasp my pen and try to draw something, anything, if only to move my hand across the page, give me something to do. You an artist? She asks, not a hint of sarcasm. Rather, a slow-moving summer rainstorm rumbling closer, filled with electric spark. I would give anything to know how to answer, but my words become scattered, as though I've dropped and dumped out one of my envelopes, clippings of words and photographs that I store away for who knows when, waiting to be used for one project or another. Before too long, I realize she's still waiting for an answer. So she's, unable to really make that small talk, but Zoe's kind of trying to start. Eventually they do get going, and I'll share one later. But first, just about nature, I wanted to point out this next poem is when she's trying to figure out when she could cross paths again with Zoe. And so she's down by the creek, her favorite spot on her rock. And this is called My Plan. Like the bending trees beside me, dipping their thirsty roots, I dip my fingers into the cold creek, dig into warm, silky mud, while that girl's words sink in. She drinks hot chocolate year-round because even in summer, air conditioning makes her cold. And she gets hers at Compass Cafe, where they add cinnamon, just like her Nana used to do. That is how I come up with my plan. It's way out of my comfort zone because coffee shops are full of people. But I want to know, if we talked again, could that raw part of myself become something more? So then she invites, it's not right away, but later in the story, after her mom has died by then. So we're skipping ahead, but she does invite Zoe to the creek at some point. And this
which is a big step
again,
for her because she's sharing her insides with Zoe.
Right. And it shows that difference between the way, Bryn is very comfortable in silence and Zoe is not so. So you kind of get a hint of that. It's called Still. I invite Zoe to walk with me through restored prairie, between oak and hickory, down to the creek, right to my usual limestone rock. Checking upstream, then down, she asks, "You come here often?" I nod, then hand her a small stone. She turns it around in her fingers, looks at it closely, then slips it into her pocket. Her body fidgets, as though words can't wait to escape. I dig my heels into the quiet and sit still. I can't make her listen, but I do carve out space. so she's made space for Zoe to be in her world. Yeah, like you said. And then I wanted to point out again that nature is part of her connection with her mom. So, after her mom dies, it's a way of her to, for her to go back to kind of be with her mom in a way.
The other
And
thing
it's
is, in the book, she doesn't accept her mother's death for a very long time. It was not one of these things where she had cancer and they all expected that she would die. She was very sick, but it was sudden.
Right. And that's one of the things where it's, she's afraid that it's coming, but she doesn't ever talk about it. And her mom doesn't talk about it. So they have this silence between them. And her grief is, not a straight line. Researchers have explained that grief, there are stages they call, but it's not a straight line. It's, back and forth, up and down, all around. And like the landscape, there's deep valleys, plateaus, and that's Bryn's story of, not being able to accept and not wanting to talk about it with anyone and have anyone else talk about it because she just is not ready to face that reality. It's too much because it was sudden, like I said.
Well, the thing that actually, and this is a total spoiler alert, so pause, mute it for a couple seconds if you want to read the book and not have a spoiler alert. But what breaks up Zoe and Bryn is her silence.
Right. Yeah. So that like really, that's the tension. And yeah, I'm going to share a little bit more. I wanted to share some poems about that too, kind of leading up of that not being able to talk. I was going to share one more on called Friends. Do you want to hear that one?
Sure.
It's about so it's after her mom has died, and these are her friends, the flowers. And we see that while nature has been helpful, it also is not quite enough. Friends, the restored prairie and oak savanna are where I meet my only circle of friends. Black-eyed Susan, compass plant, cup plant, pale purple cone flower. These are the familiar faces I count on. Native bur oaks welcome me with their outstretched branches. It's the closest I get to not feeling so alone. And so she's, she has her like family of flowers and plants and, it's all good, except she still does need that connection with people. And she doesn't know how to reconcile her inability and, not wanting to face their, all these strong emotions of grief with needing to connect with other people. So it takes her a while.
She actually finds a friend who isn't a love interest.
Right.
And that becomes a super important character in the book because I think often in books about teens that they do focus on the love interest or the competitive relationship with friends and not so much on the importance of a relationship with a friend and getting vulnerable with a friend. And I think you did that beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really love Dana as the friend. And she shows up a little while later. And yeah, she's really important to the healing process for sure. Yeah. And just important in her life, like obviously. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to talk about the challenges in the relationship between Bryn and Zoe beyond just the silence?
Well, I was thinking I could share kind of the progression, like that first initial meet, excitement, and then share a little bit of that tension of not being able to talk. Would you like to hear some poems about that?
Sure.
Because it's a lot of that. So there's this initial excitement, and like when they do finally get talking, first she doesn't know what to say. Bryn doesn't. But then as she gets Zoe talking, then she's able to get comfortable, and then they start talking some more. So page 9, it's called Names. We leap and bound from art to astronomy, ancient Egyptians to electric vehicles, exchanging so many thoughts, but never our own names. Names seem unimportant. A name could not encapsulate all that she is, all that I feel I am, as we connect the dots of what feels like the whole universe. There's that new excitement, new crush feeling of, we are so in it together, but how simple things like a name, sometimes you don't exchange names. So she doesn't actually know Zoe's name until school starts. And because the story starts in summer and then it goes into school, and until it's like roll call in class, then she actually learns Zoe's name. But then so she doesn't actually tell Zoe, because Zoe is new in town and she's moved to town, and everyone else in the small town, so this is a small town, and everyone else knows about Bryn's mom, and she doesn't want to talk about it with anyone else. But because Zoe doesn't know about Bryn's mom dying, she doesn't have to talk about it. And at first it's like an escape. It feels really great to Bryn, because she doesn't have to face that. She can just kind of put it aside. But over time, as it gets going, there's a number of instances where it seems like, I guess this would be the moment to say something, but then she doesn't. And that tension grows. And so on page 119, there's a poem called Crossroads. The girls are in Bryn's room and they're putting together they're doing a school project they're working on. But right now, Zoe's looking around at her stuff for it's the first time that she's been in Bryn's bedroom. And so there's a moment where Zoe asks about this photograph, and is this, your mom? And she says yes, but again, this moment, it's called Crossroads. I stand again at a crossroads. I could tell Zoe right now. My mom died. 3 little words. Maybe I could even tell her about the ashes, how Grandma keeps pushing. I could spill it all, just get it out of the way. But I've waited this long. My insides burn, trying to decide. And then the very next moment, the poem is called Turntable. Zoe laughs when she sees the record player. Wow, I've only seen these in movies. Panic turns to disappointment, spins round to guilt, the moment lost. I take a breath, point to the small collection. Pick one. Her face hovers close to mine as I show her how to set the needle. We watch the record spin and listen to the opening notes. A full orchestra and a rich, warm voice echoing the question hanging between us. Sooner or later, we'll kiss, right? This moment feels frozen, yet time keeps turning. And as she steps away, my joy of being right here with her inside the music fades to piano as my mind turns back to the question that blares like a trumpet. When and how will I ever tell Zoe about Mom?
Now, there's also some major tension when Zoe's mom is very controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Not Zoe's mom. Zoe's mom. Zoe's mom is very controlling, and wants Zoe not to be an artist, which is what Zoe wants, but wants her to do something that's more practical.
Right.
And sets up an internship for her and blames Bryn on her losing the internship and not going to the internship. And that's a whole bit of tension between the two of them.
Right.
And she says, the mother says some really hurtful things about Bryn, and Zoe does not defend Bryn at that moment. And I thought
Right.
that was a really interesting tension in the book.
Yeah, that's one of a big moment there that sends Bryn spiraling because this someone, Zoe's mom is saying who she is, and she isn't able to find the words to speak up for herself, and Zoe doesn't speak up for her, and she just spirals down. Yeah, it's hard.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between Bryn and the other adults in her life, like her stepfather and her grandparents?
Yeah, sure. So they have pretty good relationship. Like Daniel and she get along very well.
No, Daniel's the stepfather.
Yeah, sorry, Daniel's the stepfather, and they he runs a prairie nursery, and so they end up working together some. But at first, after Bryn's mom dies, they are not able to really grieve together. They're both grieving, but they don't know how to do it together. And there's a poem that sums it up very, very concisely. Concisely. Daily routine. Daniel stays out of my way, and I stay out of his. The more we don't talk, the more we can't. And that's it. Like where they kind of, they're not growing apart, but they're not able to come together very much. But in small ways, we see Daniel being there for her, kind of in the background, but being there, speaking up. So there's a twist that adds some more tension that Bryn's mom designated Bryn to decide where to spread the ashes afterwards, but she never talked to Bryn about that. And so there's this question, like the grandparents want her to have the ashes buried in the family plot. That's tradition. And the grandma really wants closure, but because Bryn is still in the denial and not able to face it, she doesn't want to do anything right now. And so I was going to share too with Daniel as they go. Well, which poem? I was going to share I Make the Call. So there's a point after the big upset with Zoe's mom, she finds herself stranded, and she finally calls Daniel, and she's kind of nervous about it. She says,
Yeah, she's stranded in a snowstorm.
Right. I make the call. Daniel's breathless panic. Oh, and so Daniel has left numerous messages on her phone, but because she didn't have any cell reception, she couldn't receive them until she got up to that tall ridge where she could have some cell reception. So she makes the call. Daniel's breathless panic shakes me. Bryn, are you okay? Where are you? Tears sting, but I manage to say I'm fine. Wind makes noise. He must know I'm outside somewhere. He says he'll come get me, but I'm embarrassed, afraid to admit I'm stranded. Please, Bryn. His voice cracks, and in that sound I hear he's asking permission to be my family. Please tell me where you are. So it's like a turning point for them where they start to, there's just that they're starting to talk more, and that, plays out more as the novel progresses further.
And that's the beginning of the tearjerker.
Yeah, there's a lot of feeling, a lot of emotion. So yeah, with the grandparents, I was gonna say there was one that got my notes here. They early on, after So Bryn's mom has died, and it's been a couple of weeks, and they're trying to decide, or the grandparents want to make arrangements for the funeral, like the ashes being spread or buried or something. And so they're at the grandparents' farm, and Bryn has run off to be on the in the backwoods where like she and her mom would just roam, and just a really great outside day. But then meanwhile, her grandparents and her stepdad Daniel are talking, and when she comes back, dinner's already been eaten. She's late, and she didn't realize how late it had gotten. And then she overhears them talking, and her grandma's saying, we have to, we can't just keep waiting. And then Bryn realizes they're talking about her, and she storms in because she doesn't want to hear anything more about it, doesn't want them to be talking about it. And so she kind of startles her grandma. This is called Dinner to Go. Grandma stands, nearly knocks down her kitchen chair. About time. Food sits out, but plates are scraped clean. Is it too much to ask that you eat dinner with us? I steal a glance at Grandma chewing his lip, rubbing his arthritic knee. Daniel rises. Sadie, Hank, thank you for dinner. It's time for us to go. As if on cue, my stomach growls. Wish it hadn't. Grandma shoots Daniel a look as if to say, see? Daniel rubs the back of his neck. I offered to eat at home. The wrong thing to say, of course. Grandma turns to the cupboard, gets out an empty yogurt container, returns to the table, starts scooping food. Here, she thrusts the container into my hands. At least eat something home-cooked. You're all skin and bones. So we kind of see how Grandma takes charge of things. She's the one who talks. Grandpa is kind of quiet in the background, but there. And Daniel is sticking up for kind of, setting boundaries. He said previously that we're going to wait for Bryn. That's what, Lori, his wife, had wanted. And then the next moment they're driving away, and it's called The Truth. Daniel's truck leaves a wake of dust down the gravel driveway. Gripping the sides of the yogurt container, I wonder how to cut through all that hasn't been said. I blurt, it's not like Mom told me where she wanted to be buried. Daniel turns onto the county highway. We pass row after row of towering corn. My words dangle in the silent cab. Threshing time is coming. I imagine the field after harvest when whirling winds will pick up loose dried husks like paper birds taking flight. Out of the quiet comes Daniel's voice. We're all grieving, as if telling himself, and grief muddles everything. You'll know what to do when the time is right. And so we kind of see how, everybody cares for Bryn, but they all have slightly different ways. And through time and slowly talking and building trust, they're able to come through this tough time.
Okay, I'm going to talk one more little bit about the book.
Yeah.
The farm that's been in the family for years and years and years, they were going to sell the farm because the grandparents needed the money. Then they decided to keep the farm so that they would be able to keep the land for Bryn. That's the sequence of events, right?
Yeah, those are some spoilers, but yeah. There's some reasons, like they decided to they were going to sell so they could help out because of the medical debt, and Daniel's house, they were thinking they might need to sell that, and just trying to make ends meet. And the grandparents want to help them and not see them, drowning in this. And so they're going to do that, but then it's, in rethinking how to do it. And there's a theme of collage. Bryn likes to do collage. And so she like changing the pieces on the page, the words and the pictures. It's about finding the right place for all the pieces of their, her life, their lives. And so trying to find a way to keep the farm and deal with all the other pieces, or at least somewhat. So we see how it works out, at the end. But
you know what I'm going to do?
Hmm.
I'm going to put in the little introduction, don't listen to this until after you've read the book.
This is the behind the scenes.
That'll take care of all the spoiler alerts.
That's a good idea. Yes, the bonus features here. That's what we are.
So, veering off topic a little bit, what would you tell your 10-year-old self?
I would tell, besides the whole time travel kind of element, I always think like, what would, if I could convince my 10-year-old self, all those questions. But what I would really want to tell them, myself, me, was to not worry too much about being too much or not enough, and to just work at being more of who you are. Just, that's what I would really like. And just keep looking for the beauty in the world and life. Hold on to that.
That's beautiful. And your 10-year-old self would be very happy.
Nice.
So what's on the horizon for you?
So I'm working on some other like new starts of books. Everything's pretty new, but I'm kind of playing around with genres and formats because I like to try new things. So got a couple of different ideas. I might come back to a verse novel. Again, I kind of am thinking about that, but
now I am a sucker for sequels. Total sucker. I mean, if you look at my library, you can't see it really well behind me, but I have series after series after series. That's what I'm a sucker for. Is there any possibility we're going to see Zoe and Bryn again?
I don't know. I wanted it to be able to be a standalone, but there might, I miss them. So they might come around, they might be knocking, and saying like, we have more to tell. We have more story here. So there might be. We'll see.
Well, we'll do more spoiler alerts if they come back.
Okay. Sounds good.
Where can we reach you?
I have a website and it's real simple. It's my name, katemckinney.com. So KATEMCKINNEY.com. And I do some occasional blogging with poetry and nature photography. And there's information about the book, and you can contact me on the contact form through there. You can email me.
Oh, that's right. You did the illustration on the cover of your book. You want to show it to us?
Oh, yeah, I did.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Could not have been better if you tried.
Thank you. Thanks.
Did we miss anything?
I just, I guess I would like to mention, there's nothing, I guess personally, but I would just want to say that there are resources out there for teenagers, specifically going through depression or grief, suicidal thinking. And one resource is the Trevor Project. So it's the trevorproject.org is the website you can go to. That's for crisis and suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth. There's also the number 988 for mental health crises. And just it's an emergency number if you need to talk to somebody. And it's just really important to connect to other people. And so I just wanted to put that out here, take that moment.
And I really hope that this book provides some solace for some people who are going through it.
I hope so too. That's my greatest hope, is that it will hold space for them and their feelings and allow them to feel. Just
as a lesbian, I wish I had it when I was a kid. It might have cleared some stuff up for me.
Oh, yeah, I wish that too. Thanks.
Well, thank you so very much, Kate, and I look forward to your future work, and we will keep in touch with you.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and talk with you. It's been really a joy. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye-bye.